We will start the February Rules Committee to order here. This time, I'll call this meeting to order. Invocation. Councilor Vasquez, would you do the honors?
Thank you for this day. Thank you for everyone here. Thank you for safety and travel for all of us. And we just are grateful for the many blessings. We've had people healing from the virus, and we have great things going on in our nation to help our citizens. We pray for your guidance in all things that we consider and vote on today. And just bless us all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Councilor Vasquez. Roll call, Shelley.
Yes, sir. Joe Byrd.
Ani.
Kanan Duncan. Keith Austin. Harley Buzzard. Julia Coates. Sean Crittenden. Joe Deere.
Ani.
Mike Dobbins. Rex Jordan. Darrell Legg. Weston O'Fire. Dora Petzkowski. Mike Shambaugh. Mary Bakershaw. E.O. Smith. Janice Taylor. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Approval of minutes at this time. Got a motion and a second. Any discussions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. Dropping down the reports, Marshal Severs, Mr. Shannon Buell. Always good to have a marshal before us.
I'd like to point out we had an awards ceremony. We couldn't invite anybody, of course, because of COVID, so it's kind of our own award ceremony for the marshals. Some of the people that received awards was we had a Medal of Valor awarded to Dusty Wolf for an encounter he was in Kenwood. We had 4 officers receive the it is the, I'm trying to remember the name, Legion of Merit. That is the 3rd highest award that a marshal could receive. The highest is the Medal of Honor, and we've never, thank goodness, had to give that out. That's generally will be given to posthumously, so thank goodness we've never had to do that. The 2nd highest is the Medal of Valor, and then the 3rd is Legion of Merit. Before these 4 received it last month, there had only been 2 people in the Marshal Service receive it, myself and Daniel Meade, which is sitting over here on the couch. Me and him were the only 2 marshals that had ever received the Legion of Merit before these 4. These 4 received the Legion of Merit for pretty much throwing themselves off a cliff in Sequoia County in search for those 4 young kids that they found. It's a medal that you can see we have not handed out a lot. It's when a marshal puts himself or herself in extreme danger for the people that they promise to protect. So I would have brought those 4 in today, but there's just too much going on with COVID. When all this is passed, I'd love to bring them in and let you meet those 4 gentlemen. I did bring Daniel in today, so he's the other recipient. But other than that, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for our marshal? Yes, Councilor No Fire.
Just had a quick statement. I was there for the award ceremony with some of the guys and was able to witness to some of the stories. I think you guys do it once a year, probably. Man, I really encourage the counselors, if that opportunity is there next year, to go down there and listen to some of the stories of what our marshals do. It's pretty incredible to see where they go to. They travel outside our districts and to hear the stories. And we have some really great team members with you, Marshal, and I really appreciate all that you guys do. But it's really something to hear, and I was glad I was there. So I appreciate you letting me sit on those.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Marshal, here's just a comment. With the mindset, with things that are going on the national level, and even at a local level, are there any policies that we need to upgrade and address here as a tribal council? And I really appreciate it, just from observing in the past few years how it seems like we have raised our standards to be not only security but martial. and it reflects on how well we have run, this department here, and that goes to you and your staff. We were talking about the applicants that we receive when there's an opening in one of our Marshal's department. I think there was an opening. We had, how many people applied for a position?
In this hiring phase, we have 11 positions that we're looking at, and we had 340 applicants.
340 applicants. So, when people want to be a part of us, that's a good thing. Then that we'll leave the screening up to you. But if there's anything that we need to do on our end as a council, let us know as far as changing policy for you so we can be prepared for anything that comes down the line there, and because we want to keep our people safe.
I agree. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Okay. All right. Yes, Councilor Dobbins.
Marshal Buell, on your report, you listed a special operations, search of pond for evidence in Muskogee County. Are you at liberty to say where that was?
I am not. It's an ongoing investigation with the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, so I can't talk anything on that investigation. I hope to have some closure on that at some time, but right now it's part of another agency's active investigation. Okay. Some of the stuff that we do, like the dive team, will either search for people in water or evidence, and so in that case we're searching for evidence. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Councilor Shambaugh, you good? All right. Good report.
All right, thank you.
Next, Office of the Attorney General, Sarah Hill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to give a slightly different report than what I normally would. Typically, I address all the different issues that the AG's office has been dealing with, but today I'm going to take a deeper dive and focus on a singular issue, which I know that there's a lot of interest in, and that is the issue of the Cherokee Nation Constitution and the striking of the by blood language. And directly, address my request that the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court strike that language from the Constitution. At its core, my request to strike this language was based in federal and tribal law. It's born out of a respect for the Cherokee Nation and its institutions, including this body and the Cherokee Nation's judicial system, and a respect for Cherokee citizens who I think deserve nothing less from truth from their officials that are at the Cherokee Nation. To understand the court's decision in that case, you have to understand the Treaty of 1866 to some extent. Treaties are, in the U.S. Constitution, the law of the land. They are part of the federal law. So treaties made between the United States and the Cherokee Nation are part of the federal law. Our own Constitution also talks about Cherokee Nation's treaties. It talks about the Treaty of 1866 specifically and the way that it defines the boundaries of our reservation. And it also is referenced in terms of how it defines our relationship with the United States. Article 9 of the Treaty of 1866 specifically states that the Cherokee Nation did, quote, hereby covenant and agree that never hereafter shall either slavery or involuntary servitude exist in their nation. They further agree that all freedmen who have been liberated by voluntary act of their former owners or by law and their descendants shall have all the rights of native Cherokees. So one thing that the Cherokee Nation could never do again after entering into the Treaty of 1866 was allow slavery. It could not regulate it. It could not allow it in its laws or in its constitution. The nation agreed in 1866 that it would ban slavery for all time. Prior to the Treaty of 1866, the nation could and did allow and regulate slavery. But after the Treaty of 1866, the nation agreed to, and in that treaty, the nation agreed to limit its own sovereignty so that it could never legalize slavery again. That simple truth, that after the Treaty of 1866, the nation could never again authorize slavery within its borders, is surely something that everyone can agree upon. Now let's go to the second part of Article 9 of the Treaty of 1866, the provision which says the Cherokee freedmen and their descendants have all the rights of native Cherokees. In 2006, the Judicial Appeals Tribunal said that the Constitution, at that time the 1975 Constitution, did not prohibit Cherokee freedmen from becoming citizens, and many Cherokee freedmen began to enroll at that time. The decision also indicated that the belief of the court at that time that the Cherokee people could amend the Constitution to remove the Cherokee freedmen's right to citizenship in the Cherokee Nation. And the very next year, in 2007, the Cherokee Nation did just that. The Constitution was amended to remove the rights of Cherokee freedmen to become citizens of the nation. It was this 2007 amendment which removed that right of Cherokee freedmen to become citizens of the Cherokee Nation that led to the litigation in the Nash case. The Nash case was a case brought by the Cherokee Nation, and it was authorized by the unanimous tribal council at that time and signed by the principal chief, and it authorized the Attorney General to bring a lawsuit. And I'm going to quote from the resolution, that because the council found that it was, quote, desirable for a federal court to determine the narrow issue of construction of the 1866 treaty language and any federal law affecting the treaty regarding federal rights, if any, of freedmen and their descendants, and agreeing that a federal court ruling would be binding upon both parties to the Treaty of 1866. And so that case was brought by the Attorney General in the Northern District of Oklahoma, and 8 years later, it was ultimately decided in the federal court. The court in that case decided that the Treaty of 1866 did in fact provide the Cherokee freedmen rights of citizenship in the Cherokee Nation that were on the same terms as Native Cherokees. And that decision stated, and I'll quote, the Cherokee Nation concedes that its power to determine tribal membership can be limited by treaty. The Cherokee Nation can continue to define itself as it sees fit, but must do so equally and even-handedly with respect to Native Cherokees and descendants of Cherokee freedmen. Their fates under the Cherokee Nation Constitution rise and fall in tandem. Or to say that in another way, a simpler way, the Treaty of 1866 guaranteed that any right that a Native Cherokee had, that same right belonged to the Cherokee freedmen. The limit of the rights of one is a limit on the rights of the other. After that decision, on September 1st of 2017, the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court ordered that the Cherokee Nation Registrar begin accepting applications from Cherokee freedmen. It said in its order, quote, the 2007 amendment to the Constitution that purported to limit citizenship within the Cherokee Nation to Cherokees by blood, Delaware Cherokees, and Shawnee Cherokees is held to be void and without effect. The Cherokee Nation were enrolled in the nation at that time and have been treated in all respects since 2017 as all other members of the Cherokee Nation. Given that history, there are 3 reasons I felt it was necessary to ask the Supreme Court to remove the by blood language from the Constitution. First, as I have explained here today, for more than 3 years this language has been held void and without effect. The 2007 amendment to the Cherokee Nation Constitution was determined by the Supreme Court not just to be void, but to have been void as of the day it was passed. It was always void. That language was never properly part of the Cherokee Nation's Constitution because it violated the Treaty of 1866. The Cherokee Nation Supreme Court has, in my view, not only clearly the authority to remove language that doesn't belong in the Constitution, that was never properly part of it, it has the ability to strike that, and I would argue it has the obligation to strike language that is void from the Constitution. Secondly, it is fundamentally dishonest to pretend that the Cherokee people can amend the Constitution to strip away the rights of the Cherokee freedmen while leaving the rights of Native Cherokees intact. I understand that there are Cherokees who would prefer to eject the Cherokee freedmen permanently from citizenship in the Cherokee Nation. There are Cherokees who would like to put the issues of the rights of Cherokee freedmen back on the ballot and vote once again. But I will not pander to those citizens or encourage them to schedule an election that cannot accomplish the goals that they seek. There are some things that the Cherokee Nation cannot do. It limited its own sovereignty in the Treaty of 1866. It cannot legalize slavery, and it cannot strip the rights of the Cherokee freedmen away from them while leaving the rights of Native Cherokees intact. Finally, the Cherokee people deserve clarity on this issue. The right of Cherokee freedmen to become citizens and to run for office has been clear since 2017, but our laws and our Constitution still had language that was conflicting with federal law and with tribal law on that topic. It was confusing and misleading to the Cherokee citizens and demeaning and harmful to Cherokee freedmen. Every branch of the Cherokee Nation government has been involved in this long and arduous process of resolving the issue of the rights of Cherokee freedmen under the Treaty of 1866. The Attorney General filed the Cherokee Nation versus Nash case in the Northern District of Oklahoma. The Tribal Council waived the Cherokee Nation's immunity from suit so that the nation could be bound by the decision of that court. The principal chief signed that resolution authorizing that litigation. And when the litigation was over, the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court held the nation both to the terms of the treaty it had signed and to the decision and the interpretation of the federal court in the Nash case. Thanks to the United States Supreme Court's decision in McGirt, Cherokee Nation has seen the federal courts acknowledging a responsibility to honor the treaties made between our sovereigns. We're asking the U.S. House of Representatives to seat our nation's delegate to Congress pursuant to our treaties. We're fighting for the rights of acknowledgement of our reservation boundaries pursuant to those treaties. But every treaty is a two-way street and provides rights and obligations to both parties. The nation is fully living up to its obligations under the Treaty of 1866 today. And if the nation intends to continue to ask the United States to honor its treaties, the nation itself must continue to be prepared to do the same. Thank you.
Any questions for AG Sarah Hill? Councilor No Fire.
That was a very elaborate description on how we got to this process. And I appreciate the information that you gave to everyone today on how you came to that conclusion to somehow make the idea that you have the authority or the justices have the authority to break the Constitution. I guess that brings me to a question. Do you believe in the constitutional government?
Councilman, I've sworn the oath multiple times to protect and uphold the Constitution of the Cherokee Nation, and I understand well what it means. Yes, I believe in the Constitution and the constitutional government established by the Cherokee people.
And only the people have the right to reserve to strike any part of the Constitution, or in this case, amend it. And what we have is we have a very problematic situation whenever someone can interpret and use a different sovereign court to affect our Constitution in the means of just being that they have justified way to strike it without a vote of the people. This opens up a can of worms, because if I was to say it's against my right, being 34 years of old, to run for chief, because under qualifications I think it's 35, does that mean that a federal court can now have its say-so over, and we got to strike that out too because it's against my equal citizenship rights? I think that's a question for the people to determine and not for the courts, and that's what a constitutional government is it gives us guidelines to keep from abuse of power. And whenever you strike the Constitution, it creates an issue with the people not trusting the government at hand and who's in control. Is it a unilateral controlled government in which we see the final order as probably apparent to a lot of people who actually wrote the final order, and the justices signed off on it. And it's not a way and a proper way that we conduct a constitutional government, and it puts a lot of questions out there to our citizens of who to trust, because they don't have trust in a constitution that's being broken by its leader.
Well, part of that lack of trust probably has to do with the fact that there are elected officials who keep saying that someone has stricken the Constitution when that's clearly not the case.
Well, the
Every
Constitution
branch, well, you asked me a question, Councilman. I'm trying to answer your question.
No, you answered my question.
Every branch of the government has a
No, it's
specific.
not a
Hey,
point of order.
Counselor.
I have the floor.
Counselor, let her finish her
I'll
statement.
let her finish. Go ahead and finish what
Yes,
you were
let her
going to
finish.
say.
Thank
You know,
you.
wait a minute, when we get into these questions here, we're gonna run this like a proper meeting, so, you have your say-so, Counselor, but we gotta give her chance to say. And we'll do this in the proper way, but we're
I'll
not
keep
gonna get out of
asking.
order here.
I'll let her have a chance to answer. Go
Okay.
ahead and finish.
As I said before, the Treaty of 1866 was something that this nation agreed to, and it's something that we still live with. The different branches of the government have different jobs to do. When it comes to interpreting the Constitution, looking at the long view of what federal law requires, what the treaties of the Cherokee Nation mean to the Cherokee Nation, both historically and today, those are decisions that are made by the judicial branch, and it's properly before them. I understand that there are people who do not like it or who do not agree with it, but a unanimous Supreme Court has looked at this issue and the law involved and made a decision in this case. And I think that rather than undermining the institutions of the Cherokee Nations, it's important to honor the roles that the various institutions have to play in our constitutional government.
So then who has the authority to make changes to the Constitution from here on out? Are you saying it's just a one-time thing, or is this something that term limits may be changed too?
I'm saying, as I said before, that the Cherokee Nation, that language that you're alluding to, that the constitutional language, those amendments, it was never properly part of the Constitution. That's what the Supreme Court said in its decision. It was never properly part of the Constitution and can never be, because this nation was previously and already bound by the Treaty of 1866.
That may be so of what you're saying on the Treaty of 1866, which I believe those are pathways to things that also, like the chief is trying to do with seating a delegate to Congress. But what we can't do is we can't allow it to strike the Constitution that the people wrote. Those changes belong to the people. And we're going to set, and there's no reason for us to continue this argument because we're on different sides of the opinion on that, because I read the Constitution and it's clearly who it states it belongs to and who can amend it. And now we see that someone else changed that without the proper authority.
It was
So
changed.
It was changed without the proper authority. The proper authority belongs to the people. The council, and the other problem is that I seen in the report, because the chief was so enamored with everybody having to read it, is that actually undermined this council body, saying that we didn't do our job. And now now since we didn't do our job as counselors, as a legislative branch, the Supreme Court has an excuse to strike the Constitution. You know, our body could have brought it forward as a constitutional amendment questionnaire to place on the ballot as a proper legal process. Now, I'm no attorney, but that states in the Constitution as a supreme law of what to do. And under your authority with the principal chief and the justices, did not want to wait around for that. You wanted to do it now, and I find it interesting that you do it right in the middle of an election season. You could have done it back in 2017 whenever you had the order from the justices then. But why wait till now?
Well,
Why wait till now?
I wasn't the Attorney General in 2017, and everything that you just said is incorrect. It has to do with the Treaty of 1866 and being bound by that. There are some things that the Cherokee people cannot do, just like I just said. The Cherokee Nation can never again allow slavery in the Cherokee Nation, and the Cherokee Nation can never again strip the rights from the Cherokee freedmen and leave those rights intact with Native Cherokees. It is something beyond what the people can do. So you can tell people that they can have another election and strip the rights from the Cherokee freedmen again, but that is not possible. That is outside what the power of the people can do, because our ancestors bound us to the terms of the Treaty of 1866 and bound this government to those terms, and that is unchanging.
So this government was created that we're bounded to as elected officials. We got bounded to this Constitution that they wrote. And now we're just going to somehow and say, thank you, we got this contract from you to uphold the Constitution that you wrote. It's a contractual agreement between elected officials and appointed officials. But we didn't like it, and we're going to undermine what you said and say that you're wrong. I can't say that. That's not my job, and I don't believe it's the justice's job nor the principal's chief job. And we'll just leave it at that. But I appreciate you coming here and giving a description of why that is. Appreciate it, Speaker.
Anybody else? Councilor Buzzard.
Yeah, Sarah, I just want to clear up some things to make sure I'm clear. Is it true now that the Cherokee Nation could have a chief that has no Indian blood?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know of any other tribal government within the United States that has a chief or a president that is non-Indian?
I do not.
Okay. Does this affect our election policy and laws that some says the chief has to be by blood. Now, is that going to be stricken out of the election policies?
Yes,
That is. So it's stricken. Everything that's by blood is stricken.
yes.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure, be clear of that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything else you want to add? Sarah?
Speaker.
Yes, Counselor Deere.
Hey, Sarah, I just got a quick clarification. I hear all this going on, talking about the 1866 treaty. And, you know, before the Dawes Rolls, I'm just wanting clarification. Before the Dawes Rolls, we didn't have blood quantum. That was a way for the United States to colonize us, right?
That's right.
Okay. So secondly, the BIA is ran by who? The United States federal government?
Yes,
Those are the two things I wanted to clarify. So we see where we are when it comes to blood quantum when people wave their cards in the air. That was colonized by the United States towards our people, correct?
yeah, that was a function of the United States.
Okay. I just wanted to get that clarified. Thank you for coming and clarifying the 1866 treaty with the freedmen and their rights as Cherokee citizens. And like I said before, they're Cherokee citizens and they're no longer freedmen, so we can move on. Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Counselor Shinbaugh. Wait a minute. I apologize. Let's go. Counselor Coates first.
Thank you, Speaker Byrd. I just kind of want to say something in deference to the feelings of the Cherokee people, because we are, many of the Cherokee people at least, I don't purport to speak for everyone, no one can, but I think that, to me, Counselor Buzzard's questions were those that demonstrate the emotion that many Cherokee people have about this. And Counselor Deere's follow-up questions reflect sort of the intellect, on the other hand, that many people think about this. And I think that when we're talking about matters that are very close to the identity of people as they understand it in contemporary times, that we have to go beyond just the legalities of what the situation is. I happen to agree that the Cherokee people needed to have a voice in this, but it is a complex question, and there is a conundrum here that if the freedmen are to be citizens, that we've got and citizens in the fullest way, then we've got a contradiction in our Constitution. But to my knowledge, there's no provision in our Constitution, in our law, in federal law, perhaps, I don't know, but even if there was, which I don't think there is, this is still something that we have to be a lot more persuasive, and we have to be a lot more convincing of the people themselves as to the rightness of the action. And I think that that's why I signed on to try to intervene, because I knew that this is where we were headed, that persuasion had not been attempted. And I think that for a number of people who, in the most traditional sense, value humility, value consideration, whose tendency is to simply withdraw when they disagree, but we have to be very, very careful here about just charging in and demanding rights. We have to be explanatory of those rights. We have to convince, we have to persuade. And I think there's a lot of work to be done here. just on an emotional level that's maybe different from the political and the legal, and that's just kind of the heartbreak that I'm feeling as I listen to this kind of discussion. And I don't think that it's helpful to use terms like pandering to the Cherokee people. This is not pandering. This is one of the most deeply emotional questions of identity that we have faced in, maybe over 100 years. People have very, very different perspectives, even about degrees of Cherokee blood, and we argue about that. And I also don't think it's helpful to make statements like when elected officials encourage the people to blah, 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 blah. It's shoving us into hardline positions that I don't want to be in. And I'm on the verge of tears right now. I'm glad I'm not on screen because this is just heartbreaking to me. The harshness with which we are speaking to each other today, it's not the way to persuade people. It's not the way to convince people to the action that has been taken here. The other thing I want to say is that I understand our Constitution in a couple of other ways. I understand this as a document that protects all of us. And we may feel that removing the by blood language, clearly the majority of our people did not feel this way about it when they voted on it in 2003. But if that's to be deemed not permissible, we've got to understand that there is difference of opinion. So we're protecting a class of people in our nation, and perhaps it's appropriate to do that. But I think that when we understand that this is a document that offers protections to people, I'm not necessarily, and I suspect that a lot of citizens are not necessarily feeling that they are quite as protected in their feelings and their rights today, whether for right or wrong. I know I didn't feel that way, that I was protected in 2015 when a Supreme Court decision came down against me, when I was held to a different standard in trying to determine my residency requirements than other candidates were held to. So I don't know that unilateral actions by our Supreme Court have inspired a whole lot of confidence in people in recent years, and this is of concern to me, as we are being handed a lot of jurisdiction over law enforcement that we previously didn't have. So and the Attorney General's office, I think needs to have a lot of sensitivity to that as well. This is a heartbreaking day. I teach students, and I am a trainer of elected officials and employees from many tribes across the country in a different role that I have. And one of the things that we always talk about is that this document, this Constitution, is sacrosanct. And I see lots of other tribes who are in turmoil over what they perceive, for right or wrong, as violations of that Constitution. We have been in those kinds of crises again. I fear that we're headed there once more. And there's a lot of work that our court, our chief, our Attorney General, and all of us need to be doing here, beyond getting into positions where we're just explaining to people and imposing on people and not listening to the hearts of our people. Because there is anger about this, and it doesn't take elected officials to stir that up. And I guess I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Coates. Councilor Shambo?
Do you want to reply before I do any of that?
I will say that I first and foremost, I feel an obligation to be honest with the council and with the citizens about what the positions are, even if sometimes those are things that people don't want to hear. I think that that's an essential part of the oath that I took as well. And secondly, that I think this is the opposite of unilateral. This is a decade and that's why I went through the history of this case. It's over a decade of legal wrangling, votes, federal courts, going up and down the federal courts, in the tribal courts. There's been well over a decade of litigation on this topic, and every branch of the government's been involved in it in various ways. And at some point, we have to move forward from that. And we have to understand that the lawsuits were filed. I worked for the AG's office when the AG's office was arguing that the freedmen should be excluded under the Constitution. That wasn't the ruling of the federal court. We have to live with the rulings of the federal court, and we have to live with the Treaty of 1866. And so I don't feel that this is unilateral, and it's certainly not sudden. It comes with a lot of history that I think people have to spend some time appreciating to understand how we got here to where we are today. Thank you for the opportunity to respond.
I don't, this is really quite a shock when, first of all, I had no clue this was going to happen, and all of a sudden, you get a text and then you get some paperwork saying that this is what's going on. I wish we could have been given a little heads up that this was, had been filed or this had been asked to be ruled on. I think it would have been a little easier, and we would have had a little bit to prepare for. But I'm really, the hard thing about when anything major like this happens, and you almost have to ask yourself, how did we get here? How did we get to the point that we came to yesterday? And looking back at things, and there were some things that happened that pushed us in this direction, almost to the point of we almost did it to ourselves, it seems like. The tribal council, I think it was in 2009, they said, requested from the government and almost waived our sovereignty to make a decision on this. I mean, that is this council saying, we're waiving our sovereignty. You tell us whatever decision you make, that's the decisive decision. We will go by that. I mean, that's the information that I got. I mean, that sets this whole thing up. But when I look at our Constitution, and I look at our old Constitution, the new Constitution, and correct me if I'm wrong, has not been accepted by the BIA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, I mean, that even throws up another thing in the air. If they haven't accepted it, but our old one has been accepted, I mean, are we going to try to get this new one accepted by the BIA? I mean, when are they going to do that?
Well, the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court ruled back in 2006 that no further approval was required by the BIA for our Constitution to be effective. So it's not something that the nation needs.
Okay. Well, I know that I don't know, looking back to 1866, you look at the intent of things. I don't know if that was their intent, was to give the rights that was. I don't know what those founders, their intent was when they wrote that. I mean, I am conflicted on this also, because I know what my constituents in my district want, and I know why they're upset. And I try to go back and look at everything that was discussed and how we got there, and gosh, this is not an easy answer, and I know it's easy to get angry, but I think cooler heads are going to have to prevail, and if there's going to be another side of this, it's obviously going to have to go through litigation. And the one thing I hope that doesn't happen is Well, I hope that we are not encouraging people to riot and protest and things like that. That's really, I watched that with our federal government, and that is not the Cherokee way at all. I hope we don't encourage our people to do that, but also, if we are going to, I mean, if I think there's a legal way to do things, is what I'm saying. I feel that I have to represent my constituents in this matter. But then when I look back at treaties and tribes who violated their treaties, has there not been instances where the federal government has withheld money because tribes have violated their treaties?
That was certainly a very real and present threat back in 2007 when the amendment passed the Cherokee Nation. There were very significant threats to do exactly that same thing to the Cherokee Nation.
Yeah, I think all of these things, gosh, you can't isolate one event and say this is the deal. I mean, there's so many things that led up to this that have to be looked at, and you know, our treaty, if we violate our treaty, and this is just from the other side, if we violate our treaty, what does that do to everything else in that treaty as opposed to how the government looks at us? But at the same time, I'm kind of just heartbroken because it's difficult for me not to see a non-Cherokee in that position that does not have Cherokee blood. That's difficult for me to swallow. I'll just be honest with you. I understand the law. I've been in law most of my life, but that's a difficult thing for me to swallow. I will support whatever's best for our Cherokee people because I do not want to lose our treaty rights. I don't want to be on the person that put us in that position. But at the same time, I'm just telling you that this is a difficult thing for me.
And I can certainly appreciate that. And I will say, you know, it is an important thing that the treaty provides to Cherokee freedmen, the right to run for office. But to win an office, they have to win an election. And a Cherokee freedman who wanted to win an election in the Cherokee Nation would need to persuade the other Cherokees that they were the best person for that job, that they were looking out for all Cherokee citizens regardless of whether they had Cherokee blood or not. And that doesn't change. There's still an election process that they would have to persuade the other Cherokees that they were looking out for the interests of all Cherokee people.
And I agree and I understand about that. And I've always said that, you know, that's everybody's right to vote who they want in office. Well, I've kind of bounced around. It didn't come out as well as I wanted it to. But again, I'm just, you know, this is a difficult matter. But you know, we need to do what's best for the nation and what we are bound to do for our people. This is difficult. So, thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? I'd just like to add, I'm going to echo some of what Councilor Shambaugh said. I think the reason I'm sitting here today, the reason I have the opportunity to serve the Cherokee people is because of my Cherokee ancestors. And I say that clearly, Cherokee ancestors. The reason I'm sitting here, and I'm honored to be here. You know, when I heard the McGurk decision come down, I got happy for a while until I realized what that entailed and the responsibility that we had. You know, when something like this comes down and I go back in the rural areas and I think of my grandma and grandpa and all of the people that is so proud to be where we are. You know, when a decision like this, so big of a decision, has to be made, I call people like Brother Duke Pickup, Guy Soldier, DJ McCarter, Ron Pettit, Lee Seven Star. See, those people, we still have to keep our pulse on the thinking of our rural Cherokee people. We're very intelligent here, You know, the more I look at our council members, we're so book smart, intelligent, computer smart, but we're not as wise as these guys right here that went through the tribulation and discrimination back in their time. And that's what makes us Cherokee. That's what made us who we are. They have gone and they've been tested with many, many unjust rulings against them. You know, we talked about the threat of the United States Supreme Court ruling and maybe pulling our funds. Back in the day, we didn't really need the federal government. We were independent of the federal government. And the federal government has broken every treaty possible they could think of. We're holding on to the 1866 treaty, and we're doing our best. It would be neat if it was reciprocal and the United States did the same. But it seems like it's one-sided. We always hold up to our end. When it comes to wartime, the Native Americans line up and we send people by the hundreds. We always go to war and take care of this country, not because of the United States, but because this is our land. This is what our ancestors taught us. So it's hard for me to think. I would support the Supreme Court decision. Doesn't mean I have to like it, but I will. But it's hard for me to fathom 100 years ago, my ancestors sitting around a fire, to think, one of these days, we'll probably have a leader of the Cherokee Nation that will not be by blood. It's hard for me to imagine for them to just kind of laugh it off and go, yeah, that's possible. I really don't think that happened. But then we had intermarriages and we had other people tampering with our Constitution. And that's where we are today. It gives me a little bit of hope if there is a gray area for us to be stronger. I see the two roles back in the Dawes roll. We have one roll of Cherokees here, then we have non-Cherokee roll here. Is that correct? We have two. There was a reason for that. But when you have the United States involved and you see how organized they are there in Washington, D.C., we've seen that in the past 45 days. We have to become stronger as Cherokee people. We truly have to use that word sovereignty and carry out what that means. We need to become as independent as possible of the federal government. And we're doing a pretty good job. If we were going to do how much do we depend on the federal government right now as far as financing and funds, it's probably maybe 50-50. We should be closer to 75-25 by now. And we need to be headed that way, because anytime they threat funding, we should say, keep your money. We're okay, we're Cherokees. We're going to be independent. We're going to use our sovereignty to get there. Supreme Court ruling, we'll abide by it, may not like it, but we've always honored the Supreme Court ruling. And so I really appreciate the information you gave us today, how you came up with that answer, because, you know, when we get questioned like that, we always say there's three branches of government. There's a process in all of this, and we follow the process, and this is where we are. So with that, I say, just thank you for reporting to us. If anybody else has a question, thank you. Councilor Duncan.
I'm just sitting here listening to this good discussion and felt I'd be remiss if I didn't speak up on a few things. I do appreciate your explanation, General. You know, whenever all this started, which isn't when it actually started, because this has been going on long before I was here or even born. But I just go back to, no matter what situation we're dealing with, you generally hear people say, well, that's not what our ancestors would want. We got to honor our ancestors. And as somebody who is fortunate enough to grow up in a Cherokee-speaking household, I was even more fortunate enough to go to college and get to study the Cherokee culture, Cherokee language. We have to remember that something Speaker Byrd said, our ancestors sitting around a fire talking about somebody being chief one day or on council one day that doesn't have Cherokee blood. They wouldn't have said that, but it's because of this reason. It's because that concept wasn't in their mind. This blood concept is a European concept. There was one way somebody knew that was Cherokee. You would ask, "Gogskinna, Chalaki, who is that?" Well, they're Cherokee. And that's because if you're Cherokee, you know who else is Cherokee. You don't need somebody telling you how much blood you got. You know, you're either Cherokee or you're not. And so our ancestors, this is actually one of those times we can honor our ancestors by upholding what they expressly agreed to in the Treaty of 1866. This is something that was important enough for them to address and agree to in that treaty very plainly. So I want you guys to sit back and think about that, honoring our ancestors and what that means. And that means by truly upholding what they thought was important enough to put in a document that can establish a government for our nation, our tribe. So thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Councilman.
Next, we have Gwen Terrapin.
Afternoon, it's good to see all of you.
Good afternoon.
For February, so far, we've got 6 FOIA requests. One of those is outstanding at this time, and I apologize for the error in my report that I sent to you that said there were 5, but there are actually 6. We don't have any GRA requests, and everything's been updated on the website, and you all should have gotten a copy of my report.
Okay, any questions for Gwen? Good report, Gwen. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Tax Commission, Sharon Swepston.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I believe you have my report, and I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for our Tax Commission? You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
So we're going to do the Public School Appreciation virtual this year. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Well, I hate to miss a good lunch, but we got to do what we got to do.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gaming Commission, Janice Purcell.
I submitted my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Janice Purcell, Gaming Commission? You're getting off lucky today, Janice. You're good. Good report.
Thank you so much, and have a good day.
You too. Human Resources, Atlanta Costello.
Good afternoon. You have my report in front of you. You should, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Any questions for Atlanta? You're good, Lana. Appreciate you. Good report.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Old business, none pending. New business. Counselor Shambaugh, you want to take that?
This is a resolution confirming the appointment of Nathan Bernard as a district judge of the Cherokee Nation, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Would the Honorable Nathan Bernard please come in the room? Yes, sir. You got a question, Counselor Dobbins?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bernard. How long have you been a voting member of the Cherokee Nation?
A voting member?
Yeah.
I have voted for the last, I believe, 8 years. I've been a registered tribal citizen since I was a minor. My mother registered us. But as far as voting, I have participated in voting in the last 8 years that I know of.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Counselor No Fire.
Why do you believe you were appointed to be a Chief Justice? You haven't been a justice before in the past, so I was just asking, why would you be a justice now?
Well, actually, I don't know if you saw my resume. I was actually on the AAB which is they've also called it the Employees Appeals Board.
Right.
And I served there for, I was appointed for 5 years, but it was cut a little bit short due to the change in the law. But I, certainly enjoyed my time doing that. I feel that gives me qualifications for this position. I don't know if you were familiar with how the AAB was managed, but it was essentially 3 attorneys. It was an adversarial process. Most of the people were represented. And we ruled on motions, we took evidence, we took testimony, and made decisions.
So you have a little bit of procedural law experience, I guess, from that?
Yes, and plus my background, I'm a trial lawyer.
Okay.
I've been doing that for 28 years now, going on 29 in September.
And what kind of trial lawyer is that? What kind of law is it that you're practicing?
What type of law have I
Yeah.
practiced?
Right.
Primarily in the personal injury area.
Right.
But I've also handled other matters, but primarily it's been in the personal injury area.
Do you have experience with criminal procedures?
I do. Not as much as I do with the personal injury, but I have had, some criminal matters where I've represented some individuals.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because that was a concern of mine, was I just didn't see that in your resume. I didn't see any criminal procedural cases that were in there, so I thought that would be a thing to have as a, sitting on our courts, and now what we're going to be having to deal with since McGirt, there's going to be a lot of criminal cases coming down, so procedurally handling that in our courtroom, I didn't know what kind of experience you had.
Right. I understand.
Okay, all right, that's it. All right, appreciate it, Speaker.
Yes, Counselor Buzzard.
Yes, can you give us a little bit of your background about maybe culture activities in your life or your mother and dad's life, about the culture activities of specifically Indian tribes or Cherokees?
Well, as far as cultural activities, I was born and raised here in Tulsa. My mother is originally from Stillwater, and I have memories where I was a little kid. We went down to Tulsa, as a matter of fact, and registered. I remember my mom getting together all of our the birth certificates and the death certificates that was all needed. And as far as the participation that we've had, I received some scholarships from the Cherokee Nation to go to undergrad. The Cherokee Nation paid for, helped me, because it was expensive, paid for law school every single semester. And I'm proud to give back by participating in the AAB, and then certainly if I receive the appointment and the confirmation as district judge, I'm proud to give back there.
Thank you. That's interesting to know, because I feel like that's important for a district judge to sit on our courts, to be culturally sensitive about some of our native people, because that's who you'll be dealing with.
I understand.
The other thing is, I'm just curious, and you can answer this if you want to or not, but you've heard the discussion about the ruling that just came down of our Supreme Court. Do you have any feeling about that? I guess my question would be, in your opinion, who has the right to change the wording in Constitution? I'm going to say the United States. How would that work?
Well, as a lawyer, we have to follow the law. I am certainly in agreement with that. As far as changing the Constitution, I can tell you now, I haven't researched as deeply as Attorney General Hill. I would have to do my homework, essentially, before I think I can answer that appropriately.
What do you think would happen if our Supreme Court changed the Constitution of the United States? You think the people would accept it, or I don't know? What's your feeling? How would you feel about that? And you don't have to answer that if you.
Well, yeah, as far as predicting what would happen, I can tell you, I don't. I mean, I am definitely a firm believer in that If we have laws in place, then we need to follow the laws. Okay. All right.
Anybody else? Yes, Counselor No Fire.
I appreciate you trying to answer that question there. It's a good question that Counselor Buzzard asked. Did you live inside of our reservation now, or do you live outside of a reservation in Tulsa?
I live outside.
Okay.
I live in South Tulsa.
Okay, so I guess the hurdle I'm trying to jump with, outside of just the limited scope on criminal procedural law experiences that you've had, is that you would be the third district court judge that doesn't live in our reservation, which means the reservational law doesn't apply to you, even though you're going to be setting over and adjudicating over these people's law and how they're going to be determined and how it impacts their law. You know, you're growing up in Tulsa. I know we have a lot of citizens that grow up at large and are greatly interested in trying to connect back here into our reservation, and they are all equal citizens. But far as the law scope goes, it belongs inside the confines of our reservation. And so since it's not applicable to you, since you don't live there, I find it hard for someone to have a compassion relation coming from the bench when making decisions among people who don't live under the same law that you do. And so I kind of feel that the disconnect between having three justices who don't have to abide by the laws that they're now going to make determinations over is a concern of mine. I think that it would be good to have nominations that this council is going to be affirming, that are justices that actually live inside of our boundaries, that connect and walk daily with our reservational Indians here, so that way they know how these determinations are impacted. And I know law is very important, but as a judge, you get to determine the outcome. And that outcome is very different from people that, say, live in Tulsa than the ones that could live out in Bellefonte or Nycut or in Bunch or up in Kenwood. It is a little different on how you deal with these people and their understanding of the law. They don't understand the law, and we don't really have a good place to have representation for them. So when they come into our courtrooms and where you'd be residing at, they would have a different scope of what the law might mean. And I think that it's good to see nominations that would be coming from our in-district citizens. So that's just kind of a concern I had. But I appreciate you coming here today, and it looks like you have a lot of education in your past, and I really do am inspired by all of the attorneys that we see coming before us all the time. I wish I would have got a degree myself. It seems like I'm falling short in that category. So,
Let me try to answer that for him. Actually, he does, Counselor No Fire. He doesn't live on the reservation of the Cherokee Nation, but he would live in the reservation. Still, federal laws would apply because you'd be living in the Creek Nation. So you're still in the reservation, which you still have to abide by Indian law and federal law. So actually, he would.
I see that. I just didn't see it living in Cherokee Nation.
Right. Federal law would apply to some of the decisions he'd have to make. Is that correct, sir?
Yep, correct.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. I like it whenever we start seeing some of these nominations come back here from our people around home.
I understand. Okay. Yes, Counselor Shambaugh.
And I might add, if you're looking at what a district judge does in the court system, I mean, no matter where you're from, you have to be fair, you have to be impartial. And in any kind of trial that a district judge or a hearing or proceeding, whatever he does, there are going to be two sides that's presented to that judge. You know, if there's going to be a district attorney, there's going to be, defense. And those attorneys, I've sat through so many of them, they each have different opinions on the law. And as we saw earlier, there's different opinions on the law too. But that is the district judge's job, to be impartial, to look at what the intent of that law is, and to listen to those arguments and make decisions upon what is brought before him. I'm glad that you do have experience in that, especially in your civil stuff. You know, that is big because, we're going to have, when we do our court, McGirt takes over, we are going to have judges who have experience in civil court. And that is a whole different cat than criminal. And we do need those people who are experts in that area, and it sounds like you've done that for a long time. And that was important to me in that it's just not criminal. You know, it's going to be everything that a district court does, you know, we're going to have to do, and we are going to have those people whose specialty is civil cases.
Anybody else? Okay. Good questions, good comments. So at this time, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, Shelley, you got that? Thank you. We're honored for you to be here. Thank you very much. You got anything to say?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I guess we'll see you next month, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Rules Committee here. Item number 2, Counselor Austin, you want to take that?
Proudly. This is an act relating to the naming of the J.W. Sam Gadusi Building in Catoosa. And I move for its approval. I want to say a word or two here. I graduated high school in Catoosa and knew J.W. Sam. He was the elementary principal. When my wife was a student at Catoosa, he was a Cherokee man, proud Cherokee man, and he was a neighbor of mine until he passed when he was, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago when he passed. I am really proud to have his legacy continue in the naming of this building.
Okay. You got a motion and a second. Any more questions? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
There's a Scrivener's error. The name Gadusi should end with an I instead of an A. And that's.
So that correction there noted?
Throughout the act.
Okay. For those of you who want to know, that means Gadusi. That means like a cliff or a bluff. That's an old name there, Catoosa, Gadusi. All right. Got a motion and a second? Yes, Councilor Buzzard.
I just had a question for Councilor Austin, and I would assume that Mr. Sands was Cherokee. He was. Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Councilor Garrett would like to say a word.
Oh, yeah. We've got a motion and a second. We haven't voted yet. Councilor Deere, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. When we were doing this naming, that school originally, when we bought it from Catoosa, had J.W. Sam on it. And as you well know, my wife's family's from there, and J.W. Sam was what we call a full-blood Cherokee at the school where he was actually with my wife's family as teachers and coaches in Catoosa, along with Councilor Austin's. So that's why we thought, in respect to him, that's why we went with J.W. Sam, to honor him and go forward with that. And I just want to make that comment as we move forward. And that's all I had to say, Speaker. Thank you.
Well, good. Good words, Councilor Deere. Appreciate you. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Councilor Duncan, you want to take number 3?
Yes, this is an act establishing Title 10A of the Cherokee Nation Code annotated, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Got a motion, second by Councilor Shambaugh. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Councilor Crittenden, you want to take number 4?
An act establishing the Cherokee Nation Public Health and Wellness Fund. Put that in the form of a motion.
Yes, got a motion, second discussion. Councilor Duncan.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment again to, there's different issues and negativities and things going on, but I don't want to let that overshadow this right here, because this is a big, big deal. This is something that Councilor Crittenden and myself get asked about on a daily basis in Adair County, and I know other places do too. I remember Councilor Taylor, it was something she pushed for and throughout her tenure here, and it's something that citizens have asked for, councilors have asked for years, and it's coming to fruition. We have an administration right now, along with this body, that is committed to making this happen, and it's going to allow for drug treatment centers to be built in the 14 counties. physical fitness centers to be built in the 14 counties. Another thing to brag about in this is we got to brag on how good our health team is doing. This is because of third-party revenue. By law, 7% of third-party revenue is going into this. That's almost $12 million a year right now, and that blows my mind because you can go and look at peer-reviewed journals and studies, and they'll show you that mental health and physical health intertwine with each other, and they also relate to every aspect of your life. And it's something that, unfortunately, over the years, because of historical traumas and different things that Native Americans have struggled with. And so I'm just very proud of this act. I'm proud of thank everybody for sponsoring it. I thank the chief and deputy chief for putting this forward, and I hope we get it passed here.
Okay. Yes, Counselor Taylor.
I want to speak to that also, Kanan, because I am so glad that I will get to see this passed. It's easy to sit here and say, I wish we had and I wish we could do. But when you put a funding source behind it, that is a commitment. And so I want to thank the administration for listening to this council and going ahead and pushing this through. And as Councilor Duncan alluded to, mental health and physical health are going to change the way the Cherokee Nation looks, and it is going to affect all of the programs that we have. So I'm thrilled to see this go through.
Good. Councilor Smith.
Yes, being Sequoia County, me and Councilor Lake, we get calls daily about this. From mothers calling, grandmas calling, wanting to know what they can do for their kids to get them straight. Less than an hour ago, I had a call from a lady about this same problem. So I'm just being involved in youth sports so many years and seeing so many of our young kids just waste their lives and everything. This really is the best thing we've done in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Dobbins.
Kanan, for clarification, you said that 7% meant how much annually right now?
9 to 12 million if we stay the same rate right now.
Okay, all right. Yep. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Counselor Shambaugh.
And counselors, if, when we were having these talks months ago, I had went out in our different communities, and there's 2 fitness places that were interested in pairing up with Cherokee Nation too and offering, discounts to Cherokee Nation citizens. So if you have places like that in your districts, you might speak with them and get with the admin and see if there's a program we could put up where, we could get our citizens in there at a reduced cost.
Yes, Counselor Crittenden.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you guys have been saying. I remember a work group that we all were in some time back, a bunch of us, talking about this, and like we all do as humans, I'd get in a hurry. Hey, Todd, when's the money going to show? Hey, I would pester them all the time, and it's another example of people listening and working together. And in my hillbilly talk here in the work groups, I was just wanting the money, but someone figured out how to get it. And so we got, this money coming from a third party, and it's exciting, because like Kanan says, that's been one of the calls, and of course the other biggie that goes along with it, the substance abuse and mental health issues, just different issues, that since I've been on here on council, things that come up with my constituents, then I come up here and, want, and, just, it's kind of fun seeing the things that my people, are needing and demanding. It's kind of fun to, I might have to wait a little longer, but this thing's not perfect here, but, it's fun watching this, things like this come. It's fun watching Stillwell Human Services get expanded. It's fun watching that plant go. It's fun, women's shelters and all over the nation, not just my district, but just give credit where credit's due. The work groups, the people here in the council that was talking about it, administration, and the number crunchers. Thank you. That's a biggie in my neck of the woods. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? You know, we have to give a lot of credit to Lisa Pivot, you know, for years, and I'm talking about, this is past 10 years, that Lisa's always, I mean, I remember a grant she wrote, something Wood Johnson, are you familiar with that, Todd? She wrote a grant, $80,000, and, you know, I got excited when we did the dialysis center in Sequoia County. That was a good deal. I get more excited, though, when we build a gymnasium and a walking trail. And you see where I'm going, because, you know, we've got nice clinics out there for our people that get ill. But how much time do you spend in the clinics versus how much time do you spend out there with health prevention? That's where our mindset's got to be. The more of these health facilities that we build out there, walking trails and gymnasium, the less we're going to have in our clinics. So, and it's been a while since our education management now, I mean, our health managers have finally realized, hey, there's got to be a balance there. We can't just go completely health facilities over here. We got to start take care of the mental and physical. So I think we're right there at the crossroads, and our chief of staff can explain a little bit more in detail.
Well, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to let you know that we heard you. I think we had some really good dialogue as we talked through that work group, and we were looking for ways to try and make this happen. And with our healthcare team and the insurance collections and the third-party revenues that they've worked so diligently on to increase those revenues, we felt that like it was a good time for us to make this happen. And so both Chief Hoskin and Deputy Chief Warner were adamant about trying to find a way to make this happen. And so I appreciate the dialogue that we've had working together on this, and we'll continue to work on it and come up with a comprehensive plan across the 14 counties. And the other thing I wanted to point out in this legislation is we set aside not to exceed portion to be used as cash match if we had any federal grants or private dollars. So we wanted to make sure that we could use some of that, but we didn't want to use all of it. And so we want to make sure that we put steps forward to make sure that we address those things. And to Speaker Byrd's point of spending $1 on the front side instead of spending 10 on the back side, and making sure our citizens have the best health care system around. So thank you very much.
Good. One more. Councilor Coates, I know you had a question or a comment.
I've already texted this to Shelley to request to be added as a sponsor on this, but I just wanted to encourage others who are not listed to consider becoming sponsors and maybe making this unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councilor Crittenden, Councilor No Fire, let's wrap it up. Alphabetical order. Okay.
All right. Alphabetical. I like it. No, Todd, now, constituents of ours have already been sending us, some of their great ideas, living in the area and stuff. Where can we just shoot that to, a good place, and where we can collect those great ideas and kind of be in on some of the conversations? Just, Tara Lee, I see her waving back there.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you'll give me just a couple of days, what I'd like to do is set up a collection pool for us to have a specific email address, and that way it goes into a box that we can go in and examine. That way we don't flood Tara Lee's inbox or mine, and it gets lost and we miss some really good information. So if you allow me a day or two, I'll try to get something and we'll publish that and send it to you so that we can harvest those ideas. And
yeah, because there's some good ones out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure Shelley knows. Put me down as a sponsor.
Okay. Any other sponsors? I think it's pretty unanimous. Okay. All right. That concludes the agenda. Any announcements to my right here? Did we not vote? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, pretty unanimous. Councilor Buzzard, you good?
Yeah. All right. Well, Mr. Speaker, Councilor Dora, Councilor John Crittenden, and Councilor Austin they're having trouble seeing that screen up there in the front from back here in the back. Is there anything that we can do to help them? Because I can't see it either. I can't see any of the numbers or any of the words on it. And we're sitting way here in the back, and we'd like to kind of see what you guys are seeing up there on those screens. So I don't know if this is a place to bring it up or not.
We could probably get a couple more screens up here, couldn't we, Mr. Chief of Staff? We'll look at that.
Okay, because it's just kind of hard for me to follow, and I was just kidding about the other guys, but I'm sure they're having the same problem I am.
What's that?
But it makes it easier for me to follow along if I can see the numbers and the words, so.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just take the travel money from the council and put 2 more. Is that all right, Sean? No, I'm just kidding. All right,
Okay,
Todd, you'll work on
Thanks a
that?
lot for listening to us. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. All right, any announcements from my right here? Motion we adjourn. Any announcements to my left here?